Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with more Neighbors from Hell's stories. If you enjoyed these stories, please don't forget to tell me in the comments. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. Break into my house, you will pay. This happened to me about a year and a half ago. I was in Colorado for work for 3 weeks and having a great time while everything back home seemingly went to crap. My dad was spiraling downward from alcohol addiction, losing his job and wife in about a month, but that is a different story. Only matters because it so happened that I was letting my stepbrother live at my house free of charge while he figured things out. Well, the breakup between my dad and his mom happened while I was out of town and he decided it would be best to move out. We have this mutual friend, Jimmy, who we played music with. Jimmy was a talented guitarist, and being that I had a dedicated jam room in my house and stepbro and I also play instruments, Jimmy was around a lot. I had known him about a year and he seemed nice enough and of relatively not so bad character, so I thought. This is how the story unfolds. Stepbrother is moving out the last week I am supposed to be in Colorado. Maybe Monday or Tuesday of that week, he recruits Jimmy to help moving boxes, and by Wednesday they are done moving him out. Well, since I am in the mountains and not getting great cell reception, I'm not able to keep a close eye on my cameras. I get a notification on Wednesday night that my bedroom camera is offline. I try to look at the last footage captures, but the cell service is so bad that after 5 minutes trying to let it buffer, I gave up. Saturday rolls around and my neighbors who had been feeding my cats ask if my back door was open for some reason. I immediately go into "what the crap" mode and think back to my camera going offline on Wednesday. I was finally at a place with Wi-Fi and was able to check my camera. First thing I see is Jimmy opening the door to my bedroom and starting to have a look around. That guy spent 10 minutes going through every drawer and both closets in my room. He knew nobody was home or was going to be for several days, so he took his sweet time. After pillaging my closet for a few bucks and some small green items, he leaves and then comes back for a second sweep 5 minutes later. Well, this time he's munching on some crackers he surely got from my pantry and leisurely jaunting around my room, just observing. A few minutes into this, he begins to look at this shelf mounted in the corner above my dresser. This shelf has a few random trinkets on it, as well as a Nest cam partially hidden in a clock, but the lens still noticeable if you are paying attention. Well, it caught his eye as he scanned across the shelf and he had a literal jaw drop. This screenshot is probably my favorite picture I have. He immediately picks up and unplugs the camera, explaining why my camera had gone offline. Unfortunately for Jimmy, Nest cams record to the cloud, so now I am in the position of being over 1000 miles away from my home, knowing what happened and weighing my options. I have one friend who I know I can trust, who also happens to be rooming with Jimmy. I call him and let him know that he should be keeping a close eye on his roommate, but not to tell him that he knows anything until I get back, as I want to be there in person to deal with the situation. Honestly, I am glad I had those several days to make it back from Colorado, otherwise I would have done something stupid that could have gotten me in trouble, like F with his car. I was absolutely livid enough to do anything. I figure going to the police is out of the question for some reason, so I hatch another plan. I have the whole video of him going through my room, so I download it, make it a little shorter, edit out the parts of him finding my adult toys and laughing hysterically, and then post it to the Book of Faces. I also tagged all of our mutual friends in the post, so they would be sure to see what a stand-up guy Jimmy is, while not mentioning Jimmy by name in the post. The title was something like, "Look what mutual friend of ours I just found breaking into my house and stealing from me." At this point, Jimmy does not even know that I know. Well, he found out pretty quick once all the "What the F, Jimmy?" started pouring in on the post. Within 5 minutes he had called me to explain the situation, that he has a problem with chronic kleptomania, and asked me to take the post down. I told him to go F himself and hung up. That was the last time I spoke to Jimmy. And guys, I'm curious, have you ever known somebody that frequently steals from shops, for example? Let us know in the comments. And actually, my family around 10 years ago, we had a family friend, or let's just say acquaintance, whose hobby basically was to steal items from convenience shops. What she did was definitely not right, but I gotta say, back then, what she did was kind of genius because she frequently changed the etiquettes on items. For example, she would put the etiquette of a milk bottle on a TV and then get the TV for the price of the milk bottle. Obviously, this only works when the cashier is not paying attention, and nowadays you shouldn't try that anymore. And the next one is titled, "Don't want to get your animals out of my apartment? Pay $1,500. I, male 22, used to live with 3 other guys. One of them had a girlfriend who was over all the time. She cleaned and brought stuff, so it was cool for a while. Then she asked us if she could pet sit 2 newborn kittens for a week while her parents were out of town. I knew I was allergic to dogs, but I did not know that I was deathly allergic to cats. The cats get there, and after a day I am an allergic mess. However, I agreed to them staying. There's not much she can do with them, so I put up with it for a week. A week goes by and the cats should be gone. I get home and they are still there. The girlfriend says, "Oh, they're going to stay for another week." On top of that, the girlfriend's boyfriend, my roommate, his mom has fallen and hurt her neck pretty bad and is in the hospital. So now he's watching his dog at our apartment. So I try to keep cool. "Girl, the cats have to go. Sorry, the week is up. You just cannot keep them here. I told you I'm allergic and you don't pay rent, so get them out." As for my roommate, I told him that I am sorry about his mom, but that I cannot keep living with animals I am allergic to. No one asked me if the dog could come, and no one asked me if the cats could stay longer. I suggest maybe they keep the animals at his girlfriend's apartment, who lives a whole mile away.
"You are so ridiculous. You are crazy. My mom is in the hospital and you care about my dog being here,"
says my roommate.
"I cannot just bring these animals to my apartment. I have roommates."
Jesus, what are we? I storm out of the apartment and immediately head to the leasing office. I tell them that we have 3 animals in our apartment and that we have not paid the pet fee, $500 per animal. I ask them to come by later and make up an excuse that the animals are being too loud, neighbors are complaining, and that we did not pay our pet deposit. The next day I come home from class and the girlfriend is crying on the couch.
"The leasing office came by and said we had to get rid of the animals due to complaints."
"Oh no," I responded. Luckily they got a warning about the pets and did not have to pay the $1,500. I suck at confrontation, so I love when other people can take the reins for me. And guys, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments to let me know that you enjoy my videos and want to support me. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled, "Pretending to not speak English after we ask you to move your car off our property? Fine, we will do it ourselves." My dad just told me this story tonight. Before my parents divorced, we lived in a 3-house neighborhood. Our neighbors to the left of us were friendly and we got along with them well. Our neighbors on the right, however, were different. It was rented out to multiple families, one of them being an Asian family with 7 cars. This is relevant. We always conflicted with them, from 24/7 house parties to trying to break into our cars. The family always caused trouble for whatever reason, dysfunctional and probably in debt with how many cars they had between 4 people. There was a particular tree on our property that my dad always parked his car under. It was obvious and known that was my dad's spot. One evening, my dad comes home to find the Asian neighbors had parked their car in his spot. A dead car that they did not use anymore because they probably couldn't afford to fix it, so they decided our property was the best place to leave it to rot. My dad knocked on their door and asked them to move it so he could park, but the gentleman at the door said in a thick accent,
"Sorry, no speak English, no speak English,"
which was obvious BS. My dad was not amused. He told them, "Alright, just move your car or I will call someone to get it towed." 2 weeks go by and the car is still there. 3 weeks, they still have not moved the car. My dad gets fed up. They may have 7 cars, but that did not mean that they could park on our property. The dad decided to take matters into his own hands. He rented a tow truck and waited for the family to be out of their house, hooked up the car and drove it out to a random parking lot in the shopping center nearby and left it there. Next day, the neighbor came by.
Hey man, do you know what happened to my car?
Perfectly English, not a trace of an accent all of a sudden. Surprise, surprise. My dad played dumb about it. Oh, I thought you couldn't speak English. Sorry man, I don't know what happened to your car. If you moved it though, thank you man, I appreciate it. Our neighbor could not do much because he did not have any proof that my dad did it, did not talk to us or park in our spot ever again. And guys, did you ever have any conflicts with your neighbor about parking spots? I think I have mentioned this quite frequently in the past about my annoying neighbor and them essentially parking right in front of our parking spot, which makes it almost impossible to get in even though we pay monthly for that parking spot. If you have similar stories, please feel free to share them in the comments or on r/ripe stories. And the next one is titled, Apartment Neighbors Pumped Their Jam at 7:30 AM. I connect my phone to their speakers. A little ween with your morning coffee, my good sir. We have had an interesting playlist so far. Bloodhound Gang, Carly Rae Jepsen, Pantera, Jer, Come Sail Away as sung by Eric Cartman, NWA, John Spencer, Nelly, Die Antwoord, Corrosion of Conformity, King Missile, more Pantera, Freak Nasty, PJ Harvey, Bahamen, MC 900 featuring Jesus. The theme songs from both Buffy and Angel, Lucius Jackson, wow. I have a lot of Pantera on my phone. They keep trying to disconnect to play their own music, but if I have to hear the bass through our shared wall, I'm going to choose the tunes. Let's dance, buddy. And the next one is titled, Entitled Neighbor Harassing a Mentally Handicapped Man at the Lowest Point in His Life. Longtime lurker, first time poster, I just have to vent. Backstory, our neighborhood is in legal limbo, our road dead ends at my house is L-shaped and just one lane. The longest part of the L is a county maintained road, but once you make the turn you are on private property. There are 10 houses on our lake, everyone owns lots. There are 5 acres that are community property that all 10 houses own an undivided interest in. Everyone has lived here for decades. My husband was raised next door, except the neighbor in question. She has been here 4 years. We are in a very rural area. I have a river 50 yards from my back door. Everyone takes care of their own lot. If you have an issue with something on the community property, such as a tree, you talk to everyone else, and once you get permission, you can make whatever changes you want at your expense. Important for later, said neighbor lives at the beginning of the private property, opposite of the river. The people that live behind her are on the county-maintained road and are no part of the community property. They are an elderly father and mentally handicapped adult son. Even though they keep to themselves, said neighbor cannot stand them. She is all about appearances and they, along with most of us, don't fit her mold. There is a community water well on community property that is next to her driveway, as well as a swimming pool in a dilapidated building that has been drained and unused for years. The neighbor's prior bad acts include taking down a tree on community property without speaking to other owners about it and then demanding everyone pitch in to pay for the removal. Workmen for her knocked down the power pole going to the well, accidents dog happen, and she sent a group text expecting everyone else to fix it. Everyone throws scrap food out to feed wildlife in a river bottom, but she lets her dogs run free with no supervision. She waged war with her direct neighbor over it because her dogs were going onto his property unsupervised, eating scraps and getting sick. She wanted to remove the pool house and fill in the pool to increase her property value. Even went as far as taking down the pool house 2 years ago, leaving everyone liable if there is an accident involving the pool, and refuses to finish what she started unless each house pays $1,600 to bust up the bottom of the pool and fill it with gravel. We are all retirees and cannot afford it, not to mention this was her project to improve her property value so she can use the area exclusively. It is safe to say that I cannot stand her. It is a shame because her husband is an amazing man. I have no idea how he has stayed with her for over 30 years. What has caused me to begin a campaign to force her to move? Glad you asked. The father that lives behind her had been very sick and was recently been put on home hospice. His son, who is in his 40s, does not understand what is going on with his dad. The dad is very private, and although we knew he was sick, no one knew he was on home hospice. Saturday he passed away and his son found him. He knew to call 911 thankfully, but everyone was checking on him before the ambulance arrived because he was screaming outside. We still did not know what happened though, because we could not calm him down enough to understand what he was saying. The ambulance arrived and went inside the house, leaving the ambulance in the road. We were still trying to calm down the son. About the same time that the EMTs were telling us that the dad had passed, entitled neighbor pulled up in her car. She legit began pitching a fit to move the ambulance because she had somewhere to be. Everyone told her what was going on and she seriously laughed. Then said it was not her problem, began berating the EMTs, demanding they move the ambulance. They refused. The driveway to the house was not big enough to pull the ambulance in. We tried our best to comfort the son and ignore her, but she began lying on the horn. It was over an hour that we had to deal with her. During all that time, someone got in touch with the son's mother, thankfully. The son is severely autistic and schizophrenic with some violent tendencies. Ian is lucky that in his state at the time she did not get hurt. I just couldn't believe how brazen she was during all of it. Now she's trying to start a campaign for everyone to call the county and have the property condemned. It does look horrible, but the son cannot live there alone. Between the father's illness and the son being handicapped, they could not care for the property. Everyone tried to help, but the dad was a very proud man and usually refused help. The junk in the yard makes no difference though, as it is set back from the road and you cannot really see it through the trees and bushes. Her goal is to have it condemned as she tries to purchase it cheap. I have a mentally handicapped brother. You do not treat them like she does. She does not care that his mother is also elderly, and the sale of that property will be the only money the son has for continuous care for the rest of his life. My family has a history of alcoholic, drug-addicted narcissists, but this woman is hands down the absolute worst human being I have ever had the displeasure of interacting with in my entire life. And I have worked retail for 30 plus years. And guys, I gotta say, indeed, this woman would probably deserve the prize for the worst human being we have seen so far in the stories. At least in the realistic stories. The next one is titled, Piss Me Off, Have Fun with SWAT. This happened about a year ago. I had just returned from a business-related trip to the frozen North, Canada, of which I had been gone for about 8 months. During this time, my wife had kept me apprised of everything going on in the neighborhood, as well as her suspicion that our new neighbors behind us, henceforth known as DDN for drug-dealing neighbors, were dealing drugs. Since I am all about keeping my family safe, I installed security cameras all around and inside my house. Most of my neighbors were perfectly fine with the cameras and a few asked if I could set theirs up if they bought them. Drug-dealing neighbors, however, were not pleased. He waited until I was heading out to my car and confronted me, demanding I take them down. DDN:
Hey, take those damn cameras down. I don't need no one knowing my shit.
Me? No, they are watching my property. Cannot see into your yard at all. DDN:
Man, F you. Take those down or I will.
Me: I ever see you on my property, you will leave in a body bag. At this point, I know my wife's suspicions were well founded. I watched the camera's feeds and started noting that he had a lot of quick visitors around 3 AM. Cars would pull up in front of my driveway, he would meet them, exchanges were made and the cars would leave. Not too long after, I got a motion alert on 2 of my cameras and my dog started going nuts. I saw my front door handle move. It is go time. I grabbed my shotgun and rushed to the front door, but as soon as I tried opening it, my beagle tried bolting outside, howling at the trespassers. Unable to deal with him, and properly hold a 12 gauge, I opt to keep my dog and yelled at the two men standing there to get the F off my property. That night my motorcycle was stolen, they broke the locks off and every camera on the ground floor had to be repositioned/replaced. I checked the footage and watched as DDN walked up to them and hit them. I was done being a bystander. I contacted the police, but even with security footage, they claimed there was nothing they could do. I was furious. I knew who did it, had the proof, and there was nothing I could do about it yet. I nickel and dimed them for anything I could, hoping to goad them into doing something. I put tainted gas in a gas can on the back of my Jeep, which was unsurprisingly stolen, and suddenly their dirt bike engine blew up the next night. DDN confronted me again, threatening that if the complaints did not stop, he could not guarantee my dogs or my wife would be safe. Heated words were exchanged, he stormed up to me and the encounter ended with weapons drawn and both of us going back inside our homes. Finally, the coup de grace, I remember the security footage of DDN's late night visitors. I filed a report with the Counter Narcotics Division and included everything. License plate numbers, car models and colors, all the information I had gathered for the past few months. They got enough security footage for a search warrant and the other evidence made sure it was not a friendly visit. I got to watch the security cameras as SWAT descended on their house. I got to see DDN and everyone else let out in handcuffs. I later found out that the dogs I had called about were being bred and used as bait dogs. The police confiscated a small arsenal and enough drugs that those a-holes won't be out of jail until I am retired. TLDR, drug dealing neighbors steal from me and piss me off. I gather the evidence that gets them arrested and put away for a long time. And guys, I'm curious, what would you personally do if you would catch your neighbors dealing drugs either on your or their own property? Would you call the police and get them arrested, or would you let them get away with it? Let us know in the comments. And the next one is titled The Saga of My Parents' House Part 1, posted by user Mamasan on our own subreddit. This has nothing really to do with neighbors, but it is just a little bonus because we all love stories from Mamasan. Way back when my parents planned to get married, my maternal grandfather did not approve. My mom's family were devout Catholics and had gone through all the nightmares, so my mom could divorce her first husband. He was an officer in the US Air Force. I later found out through my older sister, who was his bio daughter, that he would not put up with our mom's shenanigans. Granddad drug his feet on granting his blessing because a Navy officer was so much worse than an Air Force officer. Granddad finally gave an ultimatum on what it would take to marry his daughter. Buy land that can be hers if something bad happens, thinking that my dad would not be able to afford any. Joke was on Granddad. As a fighter pilot in the Navy, my father would receive hazard pay. Between this and his regular salary as an officer, he had money to buy some cheap land that was part swamp on a bayou. He picked up 5 acres, dependent on tide, for cheap. And yes, the deed really says dependent on tide. Nothing was done with the land but to pay taxes on it until my parents began planning for my dad's retirement from the Navy. When my parents were about 5 years away from the end of my dad's Navy service, they began looking into what type of house they wanted to retire in. They chose a company that would build the house to 90% completeness. We had just had to paint the walls and put down flooring. This 5 acres was on a brackish, fresh/salt water inlet on the Gulf Coast. About 1/3 of it had to be cleared to be able to build the house, which would be 15 feet/4 to 5 meters off the ground on pier pillings sunk 6 feet/2 meters in concrete. This was done to put it above the tidal surge that was in Hurricane Camille. However, the land clearing was delayed by a few days to remove a 20-foot/6 to 7 meter alligator. It was a bull alligator, so the builders had to hire men to keep watch for the girlfriend alligators or a new bull coming in. After the house was done, we went in and painted all the walls amid many arguments. We ran across a few snakes and some were even venomous. Dad and my brother had fun shooting them and tossing them into the bayou. We then got some family to put in the flooring at a discount. Now we were ready to rent it until Dad retired. My mom threatened us to not tell about the alligator in case it scared people away. Our first renters were a pair of Air Force soldiers. All the local families said they would wreck the place, but instead they started improving the place so much that they increased the value of our house. We were sorry when they moved out. The next renter was a delightful young lady who was a registered nurse at the nearby hospital. She was quiet and never gave any trouble, until we got a call from the local police. Some crazy man had tried to break into the house by taking an axe to the front door. When the police had arrived due to a call from a neighbor, the crazy man was still hacking at the door with the axe. He was screaming about needing his fix. The nurse was hiding in the bathroom crying her eyes out. The doorknob gave out just as the cops used their brand new taser on the crazy man. As our now quiet man was put in cuffs, one of the cops entered through the broken door. The house had a mostly open floor plan, allowing the cop to clearly see the living room and dining room. Scattered about were lots of drugs and drug paraphernalia. Our oh so nice nurse was actually dealing in stolen hospital drugs. Dad took a week's vacation time to go and get the house cleaned and replace the door. That cost my parents much more than they made in rent, so they decided to not rent anymore and just have family swing by and take care of the lawn until my dad retired. And thank you very much for the interesting story, Mama-san, but then again, I kind of expected that your family would have eaten the snakes instead of shooting them, but still, great story, thank you very much. And in addition, I am curious if any of my ripe stars in the comments are landlords and or rent houses. Did you ever have any bad experiences with renters? Let us know in the comments. And guys, unfortunately we have reached the end of the video for today. And by the way, one thing I wanted to mention is, please let me know in the comments if you have any good subreddit suggestions, things that are similar to r/legal advice, r/justnoHOA, and basically anything that has real, believable stories that have some sort of satisfying outcome. I'm always on the lookout for new stories, and it would be nice to find a subreddit that is not covered on YouTube yet. Either way, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. Oh, and of course, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are very close to 24,000 subscribers, and it would be awesome to reach that by the weekend.